Welcome into another edition of the Edward Jones Chatting Cage. Tim McMaster here, and we are lucky to be joined in the Chatting Cage today by Dodgers President of Baseball Operations Andrew Friedman. And with Andrew Friedman out in Los Angeles is Jeremy Brizell. So, JB, take it away.
Thanks, Tim. As always, it's a pleasure to be out here on the West Coast. Thanks for taking time out of your day. I know you're very busy to join the fans here in the Edward Jones Chatting Cage. Fans, you know how this works. Get your webcam fired up. Let me and Tim relax. We shouldn't do a lot of heavy lifting. You guys should be doing the hard work. That's what this show's really about, in case nobody really recognized that yet. So, Andrew, are you prepared to go get some FaceTime with fans as well?
Absolutely.
It's a great time of year. Obviously, the baseball season is doing well. Congratulations on the success thus far. Let's get right to it. The draft is upcoming, so I'm going to go to Twitter first while fans get their webcams going. LA #1 fan wants to know, what do you think, Andrew, about the talent of the players in this year's upcoming draft?
You know, we spent a lot of time, obviously, over the last couple of months kind of digging in and rolling up our sleeves, kind of digging into this draft class. And a lot's been made that it's weaker than past years. But as we've gotten into it and obviously picking, 24, 35, the top-end premium talent may not be here as it has in previous drafts. But the depth of the class is something that we're pretty excited about as we're going through it and lining up our board.
And that's something I'm sure you have the team fired up and ready to do as you look to the depth of that for slots you need. I'll follow up again. Twitter has lots of draft questions. Cross_Joseph wants to know, what's the difference between preparing for this year's draft as compared to last year, not just in talent, but Los Angeles versus Tampa?
Yeah, it's a fair question and something that, we've spent a lot of time, and we've got a lot of really, really good people here, some that have been here in the past and others that have come from other organizations. And as we've kind of talked through philosophically, what we're looking to do, there's a different, you're starting from a different point from the standpoint that we have a lot more resources, obviously. But at the end of the day, it's about lining up the talent and picking the best available player. For us, we need to get to a place where we have a lot of good young pitching coming. And, so we're going to focus on pitching, whether that's on the first day or, kind of more in the later rounds remains to be seen, because, again, it's going to be a product of kind of what the draft board has to offer. But that's one thing that we're really focused on, is how to, augment our minor league system with as much pitching depth as we can.
There you have it, folks. That's the information you want on how the Dodgers are approaching this year's draft. This is the Edward Jones Chatting Cage. Fans, you are the fuel. We got a fan with us now. What's your name? Where are you from? What's your question for Mr. Friedman?
Hi, Andrew. I'm Hank Roberts from Phoenix, Arizona, and I want to be a GM or executive of baseball operations for this situation when I grow up, any managerial position like that. What is your best advice to get me there?
Oh, boy. Networking. I think the biggest thing is, to display your passion and have as many people around the game get a feel for that. So it's sending letters, being respectful, yet, staying on top of it. There's all of us that are in these positions are fortunate in a lot of respects. And so it's about being as passionate as you are about the game, displaying that to others, and just getting your foot in the door. And then from there, immersing yourself in everything that the game has to offer.
Great advice. There you have, folks. It's one of the things we love about that Chatting Cage. Young fans of all types get to get the advice from the people that have achieved certain things here in the game. Tim, one of our great achievements back there, Tim McMaster's in the studio. Tim, what do you have?
Thanks a lot, JB. Yeah, we're going to switch over to Facebook for a second here, Andrew. And Mike Forenzo wants to know, what surprised you the most about this season with the Dodgers?
It's still obviously ongoing.
Yeah.
And, for me, I think once we get to the end of the season and we're not playing anymore, I'll be able to kind of reflect back. The pace of game is so fast right now with everything going on. And, a lot of really good people that were here before, adding in great people from other organizations. And there's so many things that we're trying to do right now that I've had very little time to kind of stop and reflect on anything that has happened.
Yeah.
But everything so far has been great in terms of the people, the relationships, getting everyone integrated, starting to really fine-tune those processes that we're all working from. Everything's been great, but it's been hard to kind of have any time to step back and appreciate or reflect on any of it.
That's true. For you, there really is no end to the work. It's 365 days now.
Yeah, I like to joke that there's ebbs and flows to the calendars. I just haven't found the ebb. So.
That's outstanding. There you have thoughts from Andrew Friedman. Fans, get your webcams fired up, get your questions for him, and we will continue. While you do that, I will go back to Twitter, which has just thousands of questions. It's hard for me, actually, to keep up with it, but I was most intrigued by, and we already know, and this is a silly question, but I'm going to stick with it until I get to this next one. This is from Desiree with 3 Z's and 3 Y's, because that's how Twitter works. Can the Dodgers get a Dodger dog? And what I think she means is not the actual hot dogs that we know we have, but an actual mascot Dodger dog. That's the chatting cage question.
That's a good one. I personally would lean more towards a monkey, but I get the affection for dogs. But it's unfortunately a little lower down on the priority list.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. That's something we'll look at.
Unless that can help us get a pitcher.
We do have a fan. They have fired up and are joining us right now. What is your question for Andrew Friedman?
My name is Christian, and I wanted to know, with the recent barrage of injuries to the rotation, so far we've been looking in the organization with guys like Bolsinger. What is it going to take for us to start looking out of the organization?
Pitching depth for us was front and center on our to-do list, even starting in the middle of October. And I don't know if we'll ever get to the point where we feel comfortable with our pitching depth, but we had lots of conversations over the winter, some that materialized, some that didn't. We had a lot in spring training. We've kind of dusted some of those off more recently and, followed up with some teams. But things really pick up after the draft. A lot of teams' attention is obviously focused on the upcoming draft. But once that passes, conversations tend to really pick up between the teams. And, we've had our scouts out, aggressively, on the trail looking at different pitchers. Mm-hmm. And it's something that we'll pick up from there and try to figure out how to augment, the guys that we have, because obviously we've had to tap into that depth with Bolsinger and Frias both coming in and doing a really good job, but just continuing to augment that depth is definitely a focus for us.
There you go. That's the tactful answer for the work is always there to build up and to develop and to move and to process as things come and go. We go back to New York and Tim McMaster, who has something probably from Facebook or maybe something else. What do you got, Tim?
Yeah, thanks, JB. We are going back to Facebook. Andrew Ben Gino wants to know, who has been a big mentor to you in the game within your career?
I've had different mentors, I guess baseball specific. Stuart Sternberg, the owner of the Rays, was someone that I learned a lot from. Jerry Hunsaker was a guy that I worked very closely with. When I was 28 years old and named GM and with the Rays, and he was someone I worked really closely with and learned a lot from. Obviously, he was a longtime GM of the Astros and had experienced so many of the things that I hadn't yet. So kind of tapping into that and appreciating just kind of the nuances of, deal making. And I'm not a very patient person by nature, but appreciating when to kind of sit back, when to be more aggressive, and someone who's been through that and been in that chair was something that was really helpful to me.
That's great, and it's great insight to see that, and also to hear somebody talk like that honestly about those mentors. Sometimes are important to help you deal with your strengths, to improve those, but also nudge some of those weaknesses and help you work on that. We go back to Twitter, social media, which has thousands of questions that are blazing by right here on my tablet. So let's pick out. This is the kind of stuff that I like to find out about. This is from, looks like LLYLAOO, because that's probably her name. Which player has surprised you the most in baseball this year, just across the board?
It's a good question. Who has surprised me the most? I mean, just sticking with our guys, obviously Mike Bolsinger has come in and done a tremendous job. Alex Guerrero, the work he's done off the bench, and also when he started are two really pleasant surprises. And I think the biggest things about having as many talented players as you can, because you can't always predict exactly how things are going to play out, but having depth and having players that are capable of doing really good things puts you in a position to reap that benefit. But, I mean, obviously there are a number of guys around the game having tremendous years. I'm just kind of much more Dodger-centric and focused. So it's easier for me to answer that about us specifically.
I think that's an excellent question and an excellent answer as well. And I would say, as president, you should probably be focused on the Dodgers.
Not a bad place to start.
Not a bad place to start. We go back to Twitter, which, and I like this one. all about that. Mullen says, who is the coolest person you've gotten to meet in your job? The coolest person.
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, just off the top of my head, going back to 2006, I got to spend, 4 days in Durham. B.J. Upton was still playing shortstop at the time, and we got Ozzie Smith to come in to Durham and work with him for 3 or 4 days. And, he and I stayed at the same hotel and ended up grabbing a bite to eat after games and just watching him work with B.J. And, obviously I grew up watching him and had tremendous respect for what he could do on the field, and watching him try to impart that wisdom to BJ and just being around the whole process of it was a really cool thing for me.
That's awesome. That sounds like a great experience, something to have a lot of impression as a fan, as a person doing what you do. This is the Edward Jones Chatting Cage. Get your webcam fired up or use Twitter, #Chatting Cage, @EdwardJones. We'll get that question, or join us like this fan right here. What's your name? Where you're from? What is your question for Andrew?
Hi. Yeah, I'm Rowdy from Bay Point. And my question is, what is your strategy for acquiring a starting pitcher? Are you planning to give up prospects or maybe guys on the team? Are you looking for someone long-term or just for 2015, et cetera? Can you give us any information on that?
I think the biggest thing for us is to stay nimble and as much optionality as we can have, as many different kind of avenues that we can go down, give us the best chance. Making a deal is difficult, and having as many different outlets as possible only enhances the chances of making a deal. So whether it's us giving up prospects for a longer-term controlled pitcher, that's one thing. Fewer prospects for more of a rental. Major league players for major league players. We're kind of open on any and every front. We have some depth on our 25-man roster. We have some prospect depth. And so it allows us to kind of go into different conversations and give us different opportunities to make a deal, which only, again, increases the chances of actually being able to do so.
Well, that's a great answer. Hearing about the Dodgers organization as a nimble organization, I think is exciting for you. I would imagine that's a good feeling to have. It's also, I think, exciting for baseball to know that Dodgers are out there and they're nimble.
Yeah, I mean, it's critical. I mean, for us, we have to manage the short term and the long term, and it's almost a cliche at this point to have one eye on the present, one eye on the future. But for us to sustain success, over a decade, we have to be able to do that, and we have to be able to stay nimble. We have to have, the talent on hand to be able to, augment our major league team with depth from good young players, but also be able to take those players to market and get things that we need, in that current season.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Andrew's got a lot of work to do all those things. To stay nimble, you got to stay quick. So that was a quick Edward Jones Chatting Cage. Lots of Twitter questions, so we might have to talk to Andrew again later in the year. We'll see how that works out.
Absolutely.
If you'd be up for it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for being with us. Always a fan.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
That's Andrew Friedman back in New York. That was Tim McMaster. I'm JB. We'll see you on the next round of the Edward Jones Chatting Cage.